7th, the year 2022, Rutherford County, Tennessee. We have a lot to talk about, so I am going to chop our way through this tonight. I believe we have minutes for approval, so I would like to call on Vice Chair Steve Piercy for those.
Chairman Cush, I have reviewed the minutes and find them in order and would move for their approval.
All right, we need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion carries. Item number 2 is a FEMA buyout request for additional funds. Is that a Michael? Yes, Michael Hughes. All right, well, Michael, we just did this like not long ago, did we? Is this an additional or is this an update?
No, this is the, if you recall, we applied for a hazard mitigation grant from FEMA to buy out some houses that are prone to periodic flooding. They were, I think, built in, some of them in the 70s, some of them in the 80s. And we made the application late 2019 before the pandemic. So we had figured on the cost of purchasing the house, demolition, let's see, project management, if we have to do any remediation, removing lead paint or anything like that. Back in 2019, we'd figured $285,000 per house on average. Well, along comes the pandemic, delays with FEMA, and now the houses, with the rapid increase in values in Rutherford County property, the houses are now around $479,000 each. So that has been a huge, tremendous increase in value. So to purchase these houses, to demolish them, the county will pay 12.5%, the state 12.5%, FEMA 75% for this project. We are going to need, because of the increase in values, we're going to need $37,300 for the county's portion. Originally, it was $142,363 and some change, and right now, with the increased value, it's going to be $179,661 and some change. So that the additional funds is for the county's portion.
Mike, is that something we'd already voted on and approved?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why have we got this done before now?
Because, well, the pandemic delayed it. We did not get approval until late last year, early this year. And with that, from that increase in property values, it's just been skyrocketing. And the appraisals came back. We went with the property assessor's recommendation, and we assumed 10% increase each year, but it's turned out to be closer to 20% or higher than 20% each year. So that's why we're needing to ask for a little bit more money, and this would come out of the general fund to cover the county's portion.
And I've forgotten, how many structures was this?
It's 3 that we're buying, and there's 2 that are waiting in limbo that we're still waiting to hear back from the state.
These are homes that we're going to tear down?
Yes, sir. Right.
How could a house in despair that is planned to be tore down increase in any type of value at all?
Well, any property increases in value over time, and that's just the way of the world. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but the values of these properties increased along with everything else in the county. So when the appraisals came back, we had figured like 10-12% increase in value for a year or two. The pandemic slowed everything down and cost us more time and the increase in values.
We've got a board that you can go to ask why this increase is there, and also ask them to change it back or not increase it. I would say you need to go to that board and say, look, just as Commissioner said, these houses are slated to be destroyed, taken off. all you're talking about is a piece of land.
Right.
I think you might have a reason for them to lower that assessment back at least to where it was.
Right. Well, we assumed a value.
Equalization Board, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We assumed a value working with the property assessor and got a value and assumed an increase in value for the process. Well, you know, the delay in you know, the pandemic and delay with FEMA's has caused that, you know, that increase to skyrocket, and also the property values. So, I mean, if that's what the county wants to do, I mean, we can try that too, but we might be coming back for more money, you know, if we have to go to the equalization board, so.
Are all three of these dwellings still owner occupied?
Two of them are, one of them is not. It's
So
been,
is one vacant, or is it?
one is
rented?
vacant, they've moved out, and it's because of the repetitive losses, they just essentially are walking away from it.
Mike, you said the value went up. Is this based on the new figures that came out from the?
No, sir, it's from
Rob
the
Mitchell?
appraisal. We hired an appraiser to go out and appraise the properties, and they have increased in value almost 3 years from when we made the original application.
So they're asking for a third-party appraiser? You don't use the county's appraiser?
No, that we hired an appraiser to get the value for the buyouts. Yes, sir.
Mr. Hold on, Robert. Mayor has a comment.
Thank you, Chairman. I've talked to Mike about this, and I have real heartburn over these three, especially the one. I do over the first two. They're still owner occupied, but to pay somebody a profit because the values have escalated when it's vacant, as you know, any building that sits vacant, and if they don't have the heat and air going in that, everything starts mildewing and moisture and dry rot and everything else, just because you're not keeping the house conditioned, you know, through the winter and summer months and et cetera. I'd send it back to them.
We can do that. We can go to the equalization board and see if we can get a lower value. I mean,
I'll make a motion that you go back to the equalization board, see if you can get that at least lowered back to what it was.
right.
Then, you know, come back and report after that.
No, just a sidebar, FEMA and the state have agreed to increase their shares at portions, but we can definitely go back and talk to them.
Second.
Discussion?
Thank you. I think what we're going to find out is this isn't a matter of our tax base is increased. It's simply we agreed to pay to buy the house at an appraised value, and the appraisal happened to take place in 2022. And so we're just simply at the mercy of at the timing of the appraisal. So I don't think it's a matter of an equalization board. We'll vote on the motion, and I'll support your motion. I just think we're going to find out that market value today on that house, we agreed to buy the house at a percentage of market value. The homeowners left the house knowing that they had a deal to purchase at a percentage of market value.
Yes, sir.
Could we also get a different appraisal, another third-party appraisal?
We could, but, you know, that will cost more funds to do that as well. So,
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. Need to be a roll call? Let's make it a roll call. So no money really spent. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
All right. Highway Department, there is nobody here to represent the Highway Department, but they have 2 items of business. If you'll turn to your pad, these have both been approved by the Highway Board. One is a speed limit change, and one is a drainage easement off of Rucker. These are plain vanilla requests, so I'll give you a second to take a look at those. but both have had unanimous approvals by the board. So take a quick look, and I would look for a motion to approve both of these, actually.
Motion to approve.
All right. And we have a second. Are we going to include in both of those requests the speed limit and the right-of-way or easement approval? Okay.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. I believe this will also suffice with just a motion. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Those motions carry. So if you'll send that back to Greg Brooks's office, Rachel, with the approval. Back to the agenda. All right, Tanya, how about building codes and report?
Good evening, Commissioner,
Good evening.
Chairman, Mayor. I'm going to make this short and sweet. I know you've got a lot to get to. So building codes issued a total of 374 permits in the month of May, and 76 of those were single-family dwellings, as opposed to last month was pretty similar. Last month we did 74 single-family dwellings, and this time last year we did 92. For a total fees collected of $132,577. And if you don't have any questions on the building permits, I'll move on to development tax and SFT. Development tax collection for the month of May was an even $27,000 for a total year-to-date accumulated total of $1,035,750. School facilities tax, we collected $470,944 for a year-to-date total of $3,915,733.70.
Yes, sir. You're recognized, Chairman Harris.
I'm going to ask you to do something. I don't know if you can do it. I think you can. Is there any way when you come and do your report that you could tell us on single-family dwellings what the average square foot is? Thank you.
On just the single-family dwellings, or do you want tiny homes or anything included in that also?
Yeah, probably do.
Okay.
I'm trying to get an idea of what the facilities tax is going to bring in and how the building and the cycle's going.
Gotcha.
So, that's something you can do?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I will say off that, our total accumulative development tax and school facilities tax for this fiscal year is sitting right at $4,951,000 and some change. This time last year, with just development tax, we were at $5,661,750. That's a difference of about $710,000. I did that same calculation last month, and it was right at $880,000. So that gap is starting to close, and close actually a lot quicker than I thought it would. So it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, I changed my mind. I just want the single-family dwelling
Okay.
because I think the apartments will all set it.
Well, townhouses are single-family dwellings also, apartments. So you want
Apartments I
townhomes?
don't want.
You want townhomes and single-family dwellings? Gotcha. Okay. Anybody got any more questions on that? Nope. All right, so we did a total of 209 zoning enforcement inspections in the month of May. And that concludes my report.
We have a motion to approve, and we have a second from Steve Piercy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that motion carries. Anything else, Tanya?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you, that was
Thank you
short
so
and
much.
sweet. All right, Doug, how about you and Mike, or at least you? Yeah, there's Mike.
If I think I need backup, I'll call him up here.
Okay.
But for now, I think I can handle it. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. First thing I want to talk about is the available lot inventory. Again, as you are familiar with this, this is the inventory that we present every month. gives you an idea of the number of recorded lots that are on the ground ready for building permits. As of May of 2022, that number stands at 761. That's up about 100 from last month. The main reason being is one of the subdivisions that was recorded last month, Woodruff Cove Section 1, had 109 residential lots in it. So with the lots that Tanya was discussing a little earlier, there was a little bit of an offset, but that's the big reason, is that was a pretty large section of a subdivision. That's why you see that number increase. But as those particular permits are issued for that subdivision, that'll be that much more in the schools facilities tax, because this being recorded after June 30th of last year, that's when that took effect. So we'll see more and more of the schools facilities tax being collected. There's a second report on there that kind of breaks down the report that I'm talking about right now, development tax versus schools facilities tax. The number would equal up to 761. Just gives you an idea. Again, development tax, that number will continue to decrease as the school facilities tax number fluctuates over time. So that just kind of gives you an idea of where we are with that. If there's no other questions, or if there's no questions on that, I'll go ahead and move into the rezoning request report. We have 2 rezoning requests that will be coming before the full Board of Commissioners next week. The Planning Commission did consider 3. You'll see that on your report. However, the third item, the one on Sulphur Springs Road, was deferred. I anticipate that coming back for Planning Commission action in July, with eventual Board of Commissioner action more than likely in August, but we'll see how things play out with that. The 2 requests that we do have coming next week, one is by Mr. Tim Whitlock. These are for properties located along Woodbury Pike. They're both rezoned residential medium density, and they're both proposing commercial general zoning for their request. Excuse me, let's zoom back just a little here. They plan to construct 2 office buildings on these properties. One of them will be a landscaping business. The other will be a foundation contracting business. These are both companies that are owned by the applicant. There'll be minimal equipment storage on either lot, but he does anticipate about a maximum of 10 employees at each business. Typical operating hours Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. with some occasional Saturday hours, but nothing on Sunday. There is quite a bit of additional detail with the application that was submitted that I did include in the staff report that you can find on your iPads. Also some concept plans as well that you'll find there. One of the bigger concerns that we had with both of these lots is they're both completely within the 100-year floodplain as delineated by FEMA. The applicant is aware of that. He is also aware that if he does get approved, he will have to submit an engineered site plan for our consideration. The Planning Commission had questions of the applicant about the type of traffic, activity on the properties. The applicant answered they plan on storing some mulch, sand, and gravel on the property, and that heavy truck traffic would only be a few times per month. Beyond that, there weren't many questions of the applicant. After that discussion in the public hearing, the Planning Commission did recommend approval by a unanimous vote. The second request is by Steve Pierce for Middle Tennessee Developers. This is located along Central Valley Road. The properties are zoned residential medium density, and they are proposing a planned unit development for a residential development. They are proposing to construct a development with 2 different types of product for single family. One is an attached product, and there's a little chart there in the staff report. You see it kind of breaks that down. 101 single family attached, and then 58 detached, for a total of 159 units. The attached units would have a minimum of a 1-car front entry garage. Detached units would have a minimum of a 2-car front entry. All units would have driveways adequate for 4 parking spaces. All elevations for both the attached and detached would be made up of masonry materials, with vinyl only permitted in the trim and soffit areas. Sidewalks are being proposed on both sides of all streets, and street lighting is also being provided. This will be served by a step system for sanitary sewage disposal, and amenity areas have been included throughout the development. Most of the discussion that we had on this particular development, the Commission did have questions about the sidewalks. Again, it was confirmed it was on both sides, and possible critical lots due to the 100-year floodplain, especially toward the northern end of the property. There were questions about vehicle parking in the driveways, especially regarding the single-family attached product. The applicant's design engineer stated that there was enough room for parking for vehicles in all the driveways, as well as off-street parking areas, some additional areas that they included on the concept plan. I failed to mention the pattern book is also on your iPads. You can take a look at that at your leisure. He's also going to add some verbiage into the HOA documentation that prohibits parking on the public streets. and has shifted some of the 90-degree parking in cul-de-sacs. He was showing originally some 90-degree parking in a cul-de-sac, which we didn't want to see, so they have changed that. They're also, the pattern book that you have on your iPads is going to change just a little bit. There's a development immediately to the east, the crossings at Walter Hill, that there's a connection there on the eastern property line to that property, and they need to shift the axis around a little bit to make sure that the roads line up properly. That's not going to affect the overall development, but I just wanted to make you aware that the pattern book you'll see next week will be just slightly different than the one that's in your iPads right now. Drainage improvements were also discussed, but following all the discussion in the public hearing, the Planning Commission did recommend approval, again, by a unanimous vote. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Doug, were there any participation from the neighbors or anything on that development at planning?
Well, they had a neighborhood meeting prior to submitting the application. There were several people from the surrounding neighborhoods that did come and had questions. During the public hearing, I think there was only one person that came in to speak, and they had some questions about the curve in Central Valley Road to the north of the Liberty Station development. But that part that she was referring to was actually annexed into the city, and we referred her to the city for that. But I believe, it might correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was the only person that spoke on that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Doug? I'd like to get a motion to accept that report.
I'll make a motion to approve this report.
We have a second from Shanto. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, Doug, what else you got?
I think that's all of it.
All right, will you and Mike stick around for the presentation the city has? Okay, all right. Jim Kerr, I'd like to call you up. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jim Kerr with the city of Murfreesboro, who is going to introduce a gentleman, which I have not met yet. Okay, and come on up. And they're going to talk about a parking study they did for the downtown area of Murfreesboro. And Jim, I'll let you take it away and explain the background and then where you are
Okay.
today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mayor, and Commissioners. We appreciate the opportunity to present this information tonight. As you may recall, the city and county submitted a parking and mobility grant request through TDOT's Urban Transportation Grant Program back in January of 2021. Unfortunately, we were not successful in that application. This past fall, the city decided to move forward with the study based on the 1 East College Street project and other potential redevelopments in the downtown area. In November, the city contracted with Neel Schafer to provide these services. We have Greg Judy and Patty Clare to provide the committee with an update on the initial finding of the study, and I would like to turn it over to them. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. Chairman, Mayor, thank you. Up here. We do have a brief presentation, and if you hear voices from beyond, we've worked with the IT staff and appreciate their assistance with that to have, as Jim mentioned, Patty Clare, who's a senior planner with Neel Schafer, and she's on a Zoom feed call that if she may pop in and say something, and so we appreciate her being here. But again, my name's Greg Judy. I'm vice president and a senior engineer with Neel Schafer here. We have an office just down the block here in Murfreesboro, and it's good to be with you all. We have been working on this for several months, and as you'll see in a minute, we'll have a slide kind of our status, but we've been going through a stakeholder engagement process at this point and kind of collecting that feedback. So we started off with a pretty intensive data collection and ground truthing process where we collected existing data on the existing parking situation and within the study area, and we'll have a slide to kind of let you see what the study area looks like. But you know, the city has discussed with us obviously about the parking needs in downtown as it relates to the vibrant community that we have here in downtown and the changing land uses that we have. with the One East College being an example of that, but there's also other components to that as we move forward. So there's just an identified need on the city's part to want to investigate that, kind of get out ahead of it, and try to lay the groundwork for action items. We did the same presentation for not only City Council, but the City Planning Commission last month. And one of the resounding themes that I took away from questions and the dialogue that we had at that time was, this is meant to be more than just another study that goes on the shelf. We want action items to come out of this. So we are hoping as we move through the process through the rest of the spring and early summer is to be able to come back to the city, but obviously in partnership with the county, because the county plays a role in this, to have some guidance and some action items to be able to move forward with that. So that's kind of the process. We planned on kind of wrapping this up in June, and we're on that. We'll probably spill over into July some as we kind of do the wrap up and whatnot, but that's kind of our timeline right now. So as I mentioned, there's been a lot of resources used, starting with looking at past studies and information on the development, the growth, and the goals that the city and the county have going forward. This slide kind of gives a representation of kind of what the actual study area and kind of where we're wanting to focus. You'll see both the red and the yellow line work. The red line work is kind of the overall boundaries, if you will. The study actually has really two purposes. One is really focused on the downtown parking. There's also an east-west mobility, a transportation mobility component that we'll talk about more toward the end. But the yellow boundary and outline is really the focus area for the study of parking and parking needs and so forth. So that gives you a little bit of visualization with that. Something we're proud of, and honestly, we took a key from what the county had prepared, and it's available on your all's website, is really using GIS and using some information that we collected and kind of manifested through this process to be able to distinguish and identify and assign attributes as it relates to GIS information. And what we hope to do is provide a tool that the city would be able to use going forward to help better manage and understand and convey parking situation and parking needs to the public. As an example, mapping that might be displayed on a website, or as the Main Street program has events like recently they did, I guess last Friday, with the music that they had here on the square, be able to communicate parking availability or parking options, so that information is disseminated ahead of time to better inform folks as they come downtown for all the sort events that are held here, whether it's special events or just routine business. So we've developed a GIS framework that Gerald Lee and the staff over at the city would be able to use and be able to kind of move that forward. So we're, kind of, if you're kind of a techie and interested in that kind of thing, it's kind of interesting to be able to use and go through that. So as part of the inventory process, beyond just the spaces themselves, but trying to we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about occupancy and how they're being used, but we kind of thought this was an interesting slide to kind of set the stage for kind of what we're looking at, where about half of the parking spaces, which is about over 2,000 as you can see, are in the garages. Of course, the city garage and then the newer county garages associated with the judicial building. But there are also, obviously a fair number of on-street parking spaces and so forth. So that kind of sets the stage of where we're headed as far as the availability and parking spaces. And of course, there'll be additional public parking spaces available come online when that One East College development is completed. Again, another component to this is the kind of the time restrictions and how that's assigned. And of course, as you all know, there's a pretty large expanse of 2-hour parking that's available and is monitored, enforced by the city. And that'll come into play more as we get into some of our stakeholder feedback that we've received, and as we move into recommendations as to how that was working today and how business owners and the public feel about and the city feels about how that might be adapted to what the needs are for the community. So that just gives you a sense of kind of the location and where the existing. There are a few 30-minute spaces, but they're very limited right around the city hall and particularly that by the library entrance there on Church. Something that was interesting, and frankly, I was not even aware of, and like I said, our office is just down the street here, is there is a precedent been made for private paid parking that can be reserved ahead of time. And in your travels, you may be aware of some of the app-based parking where you would log onto this app, and there's multiple kinds out there, but this particular one we found on Walnut, here in downtown, where you would have this app on your mobile device and you would assign and you would reserve your space ahead of time, and you see that a lot in larger urban, Nashville and larger cities around the nation. But we found that interesting that there's evidently a private user that has engaged in this. We're not really sure about the enforcement side. We don't really know how if that's being enforced, but it's just, again, interesting to see that process is out there. So y'all may be familiar with that location. So we also kind of look at occupancy is one of the key characteristics or attributes that we are obviously interested in terms of how the spaces are being used and how popular they are. And as you expect, that this slide pretty, I guess, conveys what you might already expect. These are the higher rated or higher occupancy type locations, and obviously they're centered around the square. We did different data collections on different days of the week, and obviously, as you can see, in January and February, the different months of the year, and kind of what those trends. Again, that it really is a snapshot overall, but we're trying to get a sense of kind of where that is, and this pretty much, I guess, reconfirmed what a lot of us and a lot of you all expect in terms of the occupancy around the courthouse, around the court, and the businesses. And then as you move, obviously, further away from the core of downtown, then the availability is frees up some, but again, just a snapshot, but it gives us a sense of kind of what the conditions are. Another component, and this will speak to some action items potentially going forward, is there was generally a sense of that there's a kind of a lack of guidance and a lack of wayfinding to help guide drivers and the public to different possibilities and parking situations. So that was something that we kind of took away from that. And we also, obviously, we're not concentrating just on the daytime, but we're looking at evening times as well. So there's a safety and perception of safety that we are interested in, and other studies that we've prepared this kind of information for. We'd like to be able to contrast that, and so that might identify an area of need going forward, as far as if we see a lot that might be underutilized, but it might be for certain reasons, then that might be a case for some improvements or modifications to that situation to help with that. So again, overall goals, and as we move out of the kind of the data collection and moving into the process of assessing and developing early thoughts of kind of where we're headed with this, the demand being one thing, but also managing the demand itself. So again, there may be opportunities to shift different needs from different areas, and what I mean by that is we certainly, and then this came out in a lot of the conversations we've had with the stakeholders and interviews that we've had in the last 4 to 6 weeks, and that there's definitely an interest as far as the merchants for employees is kind of one issue, but there's also the issue of their customers and making sure there's turnover and availability for parking in a reasonable fashion for their customers. So we're trying to make that easy to find, and again, we talked about the perception of safety. So again, just trying to provide that information and allowing coming up with some methods to be able to communicate that. So again, we talked about using the GIS information and trying to disseminate that information in a easy and more, I guess, fashionable way in terms of what folks that are more tech savvy and mobile devices and that kind of thing. This is just some example slides where we've prepared similar information for other agencies, but again, maybe coming up with a wayfinding theme and a wayfinding metrics to be able to communicate where parking is and be able to show that. So some of the early kind of takeaways from what we developed, and again, as just a point of information, this issue of trying to balance and figure out how the needs of the employees, because there are we found there are a lot of needs as far as their employees. With the 2-hour parking, we heard stories of employees kind of setting their watch and knowing they have to go out every 2 hours, and they've literally will get in their vehicle and move to another spot and go back to work, and they're having to do that multiple times during their shift, as opposed to the parking needs for the customers and for the folks that are trying to frequent the businesses from that standpoint. So coming up with those kind of issues and working through that. Are there options as far as expanding or having different term parking? Right now it's pretty much 2-hour parking. Is there a need to perhaps having a few spaces that are maybe a 30-minute or hour type parking, and trying to come up with a plan for that? And of course, the subject of paid parking is always something that needs to be looked at, but trying to figure out if that's something if Murfreesboro is ready for, or if that's something that kind of hold in our back pocket and go forward. But again, something just to consider. One interesting aspect, one of these bullet points too, is kind of a residential parking program. If we start designating spaces or trying to allocate, we want to make sure that there's more residential component to the land uses here down in the downtown area. Are there avenues and looking at what other peer kind of cities do when it comes to trying to address the residential component of that? And so that's something that we're looking at as well. I do want to emphasize the amount of stakeholder involvement that we've had. We've had some initial conversations with the Main Street program, and then had individual kind of breakout sessions where we had held Zoom meetings for I think 4 different groups that probably had 3 to 5 different business owners that were identified and invited to take part in that, and this is a part of that. So I really just want to emphasize that we've tried to reach out and get that feedback, and a lot of the talking points that we've been sharing with you tonight have come through the feedback of the business owners and the folks that have a business interest here in the downtown community. Real quickly, I wanted to show, kind of give a preview. I don't know if Jim's actually seen this himself or not, but we've started working on these action items and improvements. So I'm going to just kind of quickly go through a couple of examples of what, we call these dashboards, or they're kind of glimpse at a glance information on specific information, specific locations, specific ideas that we might have going forward. So in this example, we're referring to the city parking garage, so it gives a little bit of background information and some insights as to the location, which y'all are familiar with. And then so we kind of set up a matrix and then try to identify maybe short to long-term type action items over different attributes or different issues that might be associated with that particular site, and then kind of have a detailed discussion. So again, there's not any decisions made at this point. This is still something we're working through, and we're working through to get into kind of the final point. But we've made a lot of progress, and this is kind of how we're formulating our process as far as how we structure improvements and in terms of the parking and needs downtown. Real quickly, I just want to take a few minutes just to kind of give you a highlight of kind of what we were asked to look at in terms of the mobility. Again, generally the same project area, but there was a recognition by the city that, and then as you all know, there's pretty good connectivity from a north-south standpoint moving from downtown as you move north, whether that's up Maple or Academy or other options. As you move to the north, but it's a little more disjointed. So some of the traffic control issues and so forth as you move from an east-west standpoint. So there was a desire for, I guess, on the city's part to investigate if there are options to try to promote more of an east-west connection. I know when I come into the office and working here in downtown that I find myself using the Broad and Roundabout connection and coming in. Through on the west side of the downtown, and that kind of emphasizes how folks are kind of maneuvering and moving through the downtown area. And we did some data collection and just trying to information to kind of figure out kind of what's going on in terms of traffic control. And these are just some exhibits that we prepared for internal use, just kind of get a sense of where traffic signals are, and four-way stops, two-way stops, and all those are either barriers or have an influence at least on kind of how traffic flows. But what's interesting about this part of the equation is that we used a kind of a new technology tool. The company name is Streetlight, but it's a kind of a onboard not real time in the sense that it's like every minute or anything, but they collect anonymous data through the Bluetooth devices that are in all our vehicles now, and we can get a sense about I don't know if you can see this on the screen or not, but they're kind of gray circles on the perimeter of that yellow downtown study area, and what we call gates. So we set up gates, and we can kind of data mine this data to get a sense of where people are generally entering the downtown area and where they're exiting, if their trips start externally and end up internally, or if they're kind of pass through, where they're what we call external to external trips. So we went through some exercises to kind of figure out, see if we can kind of find some trends to help establish whether or not, is there something to be made here, or is there not, and what so forth. So it was kind of interesting to find out through that, again, data sampling, so it's not necessarily 100% accurate, but it gets a good tool to kind of give a sense of kind of what the situation is out there, and about 50% are either internal to external or vice versa, and about 44% they're literally just coming through the study area, not without having a destination in the downtown area. So we can get a sense of what that paths are and help kind of guide us and what corridors or what street option, what street connections might be best suited to look for some mid to long term improvements that the city might look at as far as trying to emphasize and promote that kind of connectivity and usage. And it really goes beyond vehicle, and that's kind of the meaning for this slide here. It goes beyond just the vehicle and drivers. It's about multimodal uses, where it's bicycle and the bike lanes that we have out here, or certainly the multi-use paths or sidewalks and so forth. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at in terms of that. So I apologize for talking a lot. I know that's a lot of information, but really we wanted to be able to come before everyone here to be able to just give you an update and information, so kind of let you know what's going on with this effort, and well, in the next 6 weeks or so, we should have a good handle on kind of recommendations. But I certainly want to be able to answer any questions and any whether I went too fast, or if you may think, oh my goodness, this is too much as far as going through this kind of fast. So appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions or dive in a little bit deeper if you care.
I have one. So you said we have 2,000 parking spots downtown area, and we're growing 700 people a month. So do you have any idea where we should be right now? Should we be 3,000 parking spots?
Yeah, that's the hard thing to kind of really put a thumb on. I think my initial, and this is just my opinion, in certain times of the day, there's kind of a lack of parking issues, particularly in the core. What stood out to me in looking through the numbers and some of the data that we looked at, it's also just a parking management, managing the data demand that we have. So there are some underutilized areas around different parts of the downtown, particularly the issue with employees. If we could find a way to promote different areas of town where we could allow employees to maybe park a little bit further away than maybe they're used to now, but that would open up parking for the customers and the people that go into the businesses. So it's kind of hard to say. There's not really one number based on a certain metric or size of how many parking spaces you need. It's more based on, just as businesses continue to come in, there's obviously zoning requirements and ordinances related to parking demand and need, and those will continue to be developed as different businesses come along or land uses change and so forth. We took kind of an inside the numbers look at if the city were interested in pursuing kind of pocket parking in different areas where there may be some available lots. We kind of looked at where there may be some options for that, but we're not really trying to say you need an X number of spaces. It's just more about managing at a higher level of different tools and strategies to be able to manage the parking as specific projects come online or proposed, that those tools could be used and manifested as we go forward in time. So it doesn't really answer maybe your question, what you're looking for, but what our process is just trying to come up with tools and strategies to better manage and provide those resources going forward. Anything else?
Yes, thank you. I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I want to thank Mr. Kerr for reaching out to us and you guys from Neel Schafer as we grow and as our interests of both the city and the county may mesh, I just think it's important that we collaborate. And at times, we may be doing some redundant studies or redundant efforts as our footprint down here grows, number of employees. So it's a lot to take on, and it's the first time we've had the city share with us in this format. So all I can say is thank you, and hope that we could do it again, and appreciate the effort.
We're glad to, and that was, I mean, a very high emphasis point when we scoped the project, stakeholder in general, but specifically with the county. Obviously, we share the community, and it's downtown being a wonderful place that it is, and it's used a lot. I mean, y'all know how much it's used, so it's, there's ebbs and flows, and just, as the commissioner asked about the exact parking spaces, it's just something you have to kind of work through. It's a moving target. It's continuing evolving, but we're just trying to get out ahead of it, again, to provide strategies so that particular strategies can be applied as deemed needed as we go forward. And then that, again, that's a county and city effort together for sure. Yeah.
Signage would be a huge help, because there's a lot of parking around the square, blocks off, but I don't know if it's private or public. I mean, I just don't know, so I don't take a chance.
And what's interesting about that could be like hard kind of physical signage that goes out, but it also could be more of a mobile kind of thing where you can have some kind of interactive map through the GIS and the technology that we use. So there's different avenues potentially to pursue with that. But I think that we did receive some of that feedback from some of the interviews and stuff that we had, as far as just not knowing. And that's, most of the residents and the people that frequent more often know, but we have a lot of tourists and folks that aren't as familiar, so that helps those folks as well, for sure.
Does anybody sit on property management? You do? It might be worth you and the mayor, McAdoo, just finding out, do we have any county land vacant within a couple blocks of the square that might make a future parking lot or pay for parking kind of a lot? No, we don't. It's all used up.
I believe this is correct too, that when the county, of course,
built the judicial
there's I think a capacity to build a third level, if I'm not mistaken on that. Is it two additional? Yeah. So that's been discussed, again, not just in general terms. That's if we get there, that's probably a good and a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But that's out there too. And Patty, I don't want to forget you. And y'all can see Patty on the screen. If you want to mute yourself, Patty, if I've left something out or something else you want to emphasize. Again, I know these folks' time is important. I don't want to hold them up any more than we need to. But I certainly want to recognize you.
Two quick comments. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am. We sure can. Thank you.
One is that in the negotiations on One East College, the city had negotiated 200 public parking spaces within that development's garage. So that's about a 10% increase in your parking supply that will come online with One East College, and that is a good thing that addresses the commissioner's concern. And also, the county did their analysis of their garage, your garage, and your judicial garage and your parking lot, and that gave us some very good information on its occupancy in real time that was useful to us, and knowing just how well it's used and when it's used well.
Yeah, we did have access to that report. There was a report, if you're not aware, that was done as part of that development process that we were given that information. So we had that. So again, sorry to take so much of y'all's time, but I appreciate y'all's attention and thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And Jim, thank you. All right. Until next time. All right. Thanks. All right, moving right along, looks like we are ready for solid waste. Bishop is not here. He is under the weather, but let's take a moment. I got a couple of things. This committee was notified on Sunday, I believe, of the passing of our friend Jay Bradley, the sudden passing. So I want you all to keep Jay's family in your hearts and minds. Jay was a good engineering friend and had done a lot, as you know, for the county, and specifically, as of late, the 4 convenience center redesigns. So Jay will be missed, and just please keep he and his family in your hearts and thoughts. Yes, Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe, Jim, Celebration of Life is Saturday? 10 o'clock at, where? Experience Church. And I asked Rachel today on your all's behalf, on Office of the Mayor and County Commissioners, we sent condolences and sent flowers on your all's behalf.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Again, Bishop is not here, but he has a report or reports if you'd like to look through those. His budget needs to be reviewed and sent forward to budget. I talked to the mayor. The mayor has reviewed that budget as well and sees no issues with that, and he's ready and okay with us to send that on to budget. So if you'd like to take a minute to look at it, or if not, if you want to, if somebody wants to entertain a motion to send that to budget committee for review, I'm open to that as well. And then once that is taken care of, we'll get into other solid waste discussion and business. I would make a motion, but I don't know that I'm allowed to do that.
Make a motion to approve his report.
All right. We have a second. And Mr. Blair seconds. All those in favor? All right. So his reports, and his will go on to, his reports are approved, and his budget request will go on to budget for final review. All right. All right. Now, one thing, and I wish Bishop Wood was here, because one thing I want to ask and task him, and I'm going to ask the committee if they recollect. I've had numerous questions about why we no longer take bulk items on the weekend, particularly Sunday. Does anybody remember why we quit doing that? And what I'd like to do is have Bishop ask or tell us why we quit doing that and why we cannot instigate that again on the weekend, because that's a busy day for a lot of people.
Mr. Chairman,
Bill,
I'll see if Steve can back me up. I recall the previous director during COVID, there were so many people remodeling and doing massive improvements in homes. There were cabinets and furniture and garages being cleaned out. It was overwhelming the centers. Then we started the Smash It equipment, I think came in soon thereafter. And so I would consider, if that's verified, that we could consider backing off on that. Of course, Bishop have to be here to help with our volume, but do you remember that, Steve, as being kind of part of the department chairman's motive?
Yeah, that was part of the reason at that time. I would say now it wouldn't even be possible because most of our containers are full. We're having trouble even getting the normal garbage hauled off because of the line to dump, 2.5 hour wait. I wouldn't think there'd be no way possible to do it right now. It may get better in the future though. But if you'll go by any convenience center, at the max, there's probably one open top empty. The rest of them are rimming full.
There's also a shortage of drivers at that time as well, if I recall.
Well, you know, our pledge to make convenience centers convenient, but we've fallen short on that, and our constituents are upset, and rightly so. So I want to make sure Bishop understands that we have a challenge, and what do we need to do to get it right. You know, we can't keep pushing the blame on somebody else. We have to accept ownership and figure out what we need to do. So that will be a question I definitely want to have Bishop bring to us with an answer.
And we may just, we're improving four centers are being improved. We invested quite a bit of money. We ordered 5 or 6 large compactors.
Yeah, super compactors.
So I'll just take Steve's point. If the constituents are listening, or we may not can take bulk items now, but we're making improvements that perhaps we can in the future with expanded facilities and improved equipment.
All right.
I agree with both Commissioners Dodd and Piercy. The super compactors are on order. They're coming. It's just taking a little bit of time. 4 were approved in this year's budget. We've got more coming for the other convenience centers in next year's budget, which will be just in a few weeks. There is still a continued shortage. The lines that Commissioner Piercy talked about at Middle Point has taken 2.5 hours sitting in line waiting to get up to the top to make the dump. I think Bishop's getting a handle on it. The problem is just getting the manpower, to drive those open tops. But a lot of that stuff, like a recliner, like a mattress, and et cetera, will go into the super compactors and won't go into the open tops. And the one thing that hadn't been mentioned is that Republic is not open on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
So they have to sit at the location full. He can't send people out there to pull them and go empty them at Middle Point.
All right. I know one item that Commissioner Dodd specifically wanted to talk about tonight, and there's been discussion this week about, would be an attorney reviewing potential attorneys and the need of an attorney, whether it's environmental or contract or both, in terms of things that have come up recently as we prepare for life after Republic. So, Phil, what I did was I reached out to Nick Christensen. Nick has vetted some attorneys that specialize in environmental. He went through a list of 4. Unfortunately, all have a conflict because they have either done in the past or currently have contact with Republic, so that they are in conflict.
And waste management.
And waste management, right. I've asked the city to ask their attorneys if they have any recommendations, and I'm waiting on them to get back with me. There are a few possibilities out there of some names of some good folks, because it is my opinion, and that we need to get somebody on a retainer to be able to help us in any negotiations going forward, positive or negative, as again we prepare for life after Republic. Some of you are here because of social media, what you've read in social media regarding negotiations with Republic and things like that. I can tell you I was part of a discussion with Republic, as another commissioner was in this room, 2 separate occasions, by the way. We did not meet together. That would not be cool. We were basically told that a letter was going to be coming shortly to us, and it was a heads-up kind of a meeting, that a letter would be coming basically saying that in their opinion that Rutherford County, and in particular the Regional Solid Waste Board, was in breach of contract. It's their opinion. My opinion is we are not in breach of contract, but that's all I need to say about that at this time. So the meeting was, look, this letter's coming. We don't want to get into a fight, so what would it take for everybody to be happy? we, myself, and then the next meeting was Chairman Harris, put together what we thought was a list of things that we would like to see from Republic that would at least be talking points of things that we might be able to live with if they so agreed to concur with those. Some of those items were, first of all, number one, first and foremost, don't get me wrong, number one was you've got to do something about the odor. And it's got to be something that you can prove that you are successful at fixing at a long-term rate, long calendar dates. And it has to be something that is real research and real data, not just that, hey, the complaints are down. It's got to be real data. That was first and foremost. Secondly, it was housekeeping. You have to do much better on the housekeeping. The violations from TDEC have to go down. You have to do a much better job with cover and the safety of the road up the hill, and lay a dumping platform down for our trucks to make it easier and quicker to get in and out. Simple housekeeping terms, right? Which we had not seen them making an effort. So you have to prove yourself. Those were the top 4 items. Beyond that, it was things like, okay, would you take over our existing landfill and assume all that liability? Then the question was, okay, if you do that, would you, A, take that land, mine that landfill, or B, just fill it in and fill the V, as they say, and buy themselves some more capacity?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I apologize for interrupting, but since you mentioned that part, this committee voted for a separate RFP for that reclamation or mining. Do you know where that stands?
The RFP that we proposed that Becky was going to do?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, she has not proceeded with that RFP. She is waiting to do so. She's waiting for a green light for us to do that. In fact, if that's what we want to proceed.
Thought we already approved it, though.
Well, we approved the money. We approved the money. So we just have to turn her loose. The concern was, you know, we heard early costs from an engineering firm right before Mac Nolan left that was through the roof.
But the purpose that we approved to pay Becky to do the RFP was to remove all doubt to see what it would cost.
Well,
this committee voted on it, and I'm pretty sure this committee approved the money to do it.
yeah, we approved, I think, $25,000 for her to pursue an RFP. And what she only needs from us is, are we going down to ground zero? What are we going to, there's some housekeeping items she needs to know. And what are we going to do with the waste? We going to haul it away? Likely we can't haul it to Republic, so we'll have to haul it somewhere.
It appears that that would be questions that the people that submitted a bid to do it would handle, not us, because we're asking for an RFP to do it for us, not us do it.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It's all details. All right. So if you're ready, if that's the goal we want, we'll turn Becky loose. She's listening now. We'll turn her loose on the first $25,000 of RFP.
Well, I would have thought, since the committee had already approved to do it and approved the money, that we'd already be in process. That has been delayed is disappointing.
Okay. Well, and I'll accept some of the blame on that. We were also, as we talked to other technologies, we were hoping perhaps somebody else would come in and that would be part of their package, and we wouldn't have to do it ourselves. They would want to reclaim that and do something with that. So there was hope that we wouldn't have to spend tens and tens of millions of dollars, that somebey else would do that for us. So that was the catch-22 on that. So for those of you out there, there really is no negotiation or deal with Republic. They said, hey, what do y'all want? And we said, well, here's our laundry list. And they said, okay, we'll think about it and we'll get back to you. One thing I left out was, oh, by the way, you got to stop taking Davidson County trash and only limit the intake to Rutherford County and the 3 other counties on the regional board, which means we'd have to renegotiate the contract, which means we will start paying tipping fees. Everybody will pay, right? There's no more free trash. So that's where we are. This committee's been warning our constituents for 4 years now that free is over, and it's about to be over. So don't act like we didn't warn you, okay? There's Plan Bs in the works. Bishop, we are gathering information on tipping fees, on what it would cost to haul our trash out of state or to another landfill in the state. There are others that will take our trash, and there are other companies that will take our trash. We are working on tipping fees and transportation costs as we speak. So there are a Plan B and a Plan C in progress, okay? Because we just don't know what's going to happen in the future with Republic. We hope we will all be good neighbors, but we don't know. They're saying, their opinion is that we're out of order and in breach. We don't think that's the case. But it may take a legal team on both sides to decide. So if they want to stop taking our trash, they have that right. We would certainly ask a judge to put an injunction to halt that, but we hope it never comes to that.
Mr. Chairman, this committee and maybe all commissioners received an email from a very interested party, a lady that comes to all of our meetings, and she listed a number of deficiencies that TDEC had discovered in their most recent inspection. I presume them all to be true. If they are, who takes the ball and runs with that? Because all of those deficiencies are concerning. So, you know, who's involved in that other than TDEC?
Well, that's between, right now, that's between TDEC and Republic or BFI. It's up to them to meet standards. We can complain about the odor and things like, and the trash, and for them being a poor housekeeper. But those are things that we could fight and argue in court if it comes to that. But that's why I'm about finished speaking publicly about what I would call their deficiencies, because that's what a environmental attorney that we need to have on the ready would argue in court. So that's, I guess, all I'm going to say about that. But yes, the housekeeping is a huge problem, and it has been for a long time. So, all right. Anything else? Robert?
Well, you and I have had a conversation, and I've had a conversation with our budget committee. You know, we're going to set our budget at the end of this month, or close to the end of this month. At this time, we do not have money in the budget to take care of a problem if we suddenly had to start paying tipping fees. I've looked at that, and my understanding is that some of the grant money that we have that has not been allocated could possibly be used to do that. Now that's kind of our ace in the hole as far as being able to cover this until we get a plan B in place. If not, I assure you, you would be seeing a property tax increase, because what I'm hearing as far as tipping fees is anywhere from $40 a ton to $95 a ton. And that's not counting shipping, hauling, manpower, trucks, transfer stations, and it goes on and on. But bottom line is, you know, we need to come up with a plan. And just, I've heard there's a lot of noise going on social media. That's great. I'm glad that people are looking at this and taking it seriously, but for this to be resolved, this committee, whether it's these commissioners that are sitting here right now or future commissioners, will be making the decision on what that plan is, and then they'll make a recommendation that'll go to the full commission, and that full commission at that time will decide, yes, we'll have a new contract with Republic or not, or with some other agency. That's something I wanted to say publicly, because, you know, there's talk of, you know, backdoor deals and things like that. That's not happening, and even if it was, it's going nowhere, because where the rubber meets the road is right here on this committee. They'll make a recommendation. It'll be forwarded to the full commission, and the full 21 commissioners will make that decision, not any one individual.
Thank you, Robert. Steve?
The numbers that I've put together, do you want to hear them tonight or wait till a future date?
I would say you can talk in general terms, yes.
I took it upon myself. Of course, I'm a nosy person. I like to get answers direct. A plan B or an emergency plan, should we lose our disposal place? I've contacted 2 different companies, one that can dispose, one that can transport. At the high end, it costs us $63 a ton. On the low end, it costs us $56 a ton to transport and disposal fee. Depends on which landfill it goes to. It's based on a 25-ton guaranteed load per trip. We would have to load our own trash into their trucks and furnish someone to operate our loader to do that. That will give you some kind of idea of what kind of money we're looking at. Bishop tells me we are running somewhere between 85 and 110 ton per day. He also tells me we're working with somewhere around 115,000 households. So if you put it all together and crunch the numbers, you can find out what it will cost to do something with our trash, other than bury it in Republic, if we have to. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We do not typically have a meeting in July, but because of the importance of this topic and the need for Chairman P and his budget committee, do we want want to have a meeting? Either a special solid waste committee this month, or for sure, well, if it's going to be for budget, we'd have to have it this month. Do we want to talk numbers at a special committee next week?
I personally would like at least an estimate that comes from this group to say, hey, budget committee, just in case, here's worst case scenario, what you need to supply us with funds for the coming year. Worst case scenario, we don't know what that would be. You know, we're all wishing for best case scenario, which would continue zero tipping fees,
right,
among other things. But, you know, that may or may not happen. But I would personally, you know, I think Commissioner Piercy's right, and there's several others of you have been out asking questions, trying to dig into some of these problems, and you know, we've got to come up with a solution. We've been looking at it almost 5 years now, and pretty knowledgeable. The only other thing, my recommendation is, yes, if we can squeeze it in, let's do it. Have another meeting and try to come up with some figures. And while I said that, this week I was invited to go up to see Ecomore. If y'all remember their presentation, they do have their building up. They just got electricity last week, so they didn't have their machinery operating. But I've talked to them, and I'm going to email them and request their cost for setting up a facility similar. They do it size-wise per population, but that can give us some figures too as far as what it would cost us to do a deal with them. And basically, they're very, if you don't remember, they're very similar to Waste Away. Difference that I've seen with these guys is they would accept the trash out of our old landfill if we go to reclaim it. That's the big difference between them. That and they actually recycle the municipal waste. Excuse me, where I don't believe Waste Away does.
Right. Can Steve, the numbers you gave, did you say that was tipping and transportation?
Correct.
And we would have to load their trailers?
The idea of where this come from was the paved area on our, we'll just pour it out on the table.
Yeah.
I'm not holding a secret from anything. The paved area at our Old County landfill could possibly be used as a temporary dumping floor for a transfer station if a roof was built over that portion. The state's going to require you put a roof over it. You know, that's going to be quite expensive. I think Bishop's got it at like $150,000 to put some kind of roof over that area. It was to haul the trash to either Cedar Ridge. Cedar Ridge is the cheapest. West Camden is the highest, depends on where it was going. Waste Management was going to take care of it, the accepting the trash. MBI is going to do the trucking. They said they'd be more than glad to help us. MBI would put us 2 trailers up on the old landfill. We have to furnish a front-end loader to reload the trash. We had to furnish one person to do it. And they wanted a 25-ton guaranteed per trip. We'll also need a spotter truck, or they'll furnish a spotter truck to move the trailers around. He said he'd bring 3 to 4 trailers and leave them, come get them quick as they were full. That was a temporary fix, you know, until we could do something in concrete. If you crunch the numbers down, you're looking at a little about $2.1 million a year based on the tonnage that Bishop has supplied me. There's $5.5 million in the garbage fund after we redo the 4 convenience centers. There's money there to handle it for a year without any trouble.
Yeah, all right. And there's other avenues.
There's other avenues. This is just a what-if emergency situation.
Okay. All right. Okay. you want to look for a spot to meet? Okay, all right.
I don't have my calendar in front of me, so I can't help.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
what if we devoted some budget committee time for perhaps Commissioner P. and maybe Chairman Cush to present that number and give us a placeholder, and then we can have a placeholder for that amount from the perhaps solid waste fund balance?
It wouldn't take long to come up with a range of tipping fee and transportation.
I mean, that sounds viable to me. As long as we can get those numbers, that's what I'm after.
When is your next budget?
Yeah, Thursday.
This coming Thursday?
It feels like we're meeting 5-6 times a week, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah.
We'll be frequently meeting. You can call me tonight, later,
Yeah.
when I'm,
Yeah.
or we can get a hold of Lisa or
Yeah.
Mark, either one.
We'll have something, I'll have something to you Wednesday night or Thursday morning. Yeah. And I'll call in Bishop, I'll call in Steve, I'll call in some others that are in the know. I mean, I've got some numbers too that I've heard, but we'll get all hands on deck.
Yeah, I'd like to get together.
Yeah.
The first 2 weeks of the end of June and the first of July is dead period, which means that's when everybody goes on vacation. So that would generally be a tough time to meet. But I'd definitely like to get together. I don't agree with Steve Pierce's numbers, and I think they're a lot higher. So I think that's something, I'm a little concerned because, you know, this letter out here, we can't really comment on it because of the county attorney, but it is of concern to me. And I think we need to have solid numbers because I just don't want to be in a situation where we depend on anybody. We need to depend on ourselves. So I want to start looking at it, see what that looks like of our own being self-sufficient. No republic, just us, whether we ship it out, I don't care. But we need a number. And, you know, we can go back and forth, me and him. I don't, that number's real low to me, but I definitely want us to work on that if all y'all can.
Yeah.
and
I
get
will
that
be
number.
more than glad to forward you my contacts, and you can talk to them.
Well, that's what really concerns me is that a lot of people crucified me over a so-called meeting that I was supposedly negotiating. It sounds like you're negotiating.
Not negotiating, I'm just looking for facts.
This is the first we've heard of this meeting that you had.
I didn't have a
He
meeting.
didn't have a meeting.
It was a phone call, hon.
You got numbers, right?
Yeah.
I've got rough ballpark figures.
Okay. Again.
But again,
think
I
that
will be
number's
glad to
short.
forward you my phone numbers and the names, and you can call them, and I'm sure they'll tell you the same thing. I'm not special. They'll tell you too.
Well, you know, I'll be glad. I already gave my numbers. You know, what we thought about. And my numbers really backed up by Murfreesboro. I believe he did a graph on here and showed us how much it cost for us to ship Darren Gore. So we had that. So that's one of the numbers that I'm looking at anyway, and adding a little bit to it. And the reason I am is because we just made a comment that we're struggling getting rid of our trash right now. That's what concerns me is we're struggling right now doing that. We're going to have to hire companies, we're going to have to hire workers, we're going to have to call Coffee County and see if they'll bring their trucks down here, see if they'll help us and all that stuff. And I think we can reach out and do all that. My point is, Commissioner Chairman, is just I'd like to get a strong number for us to just go solo. That's what I want to see. I want us to go solo. So whatever that number is, it might be 2 meetings, it might be 20. But I think I'm humbly asking you if we could look into doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. When would we like to meet? We're going to get you a number this week by Thursday. When would you like to meet again to have further discussion? Likely this next Thursday's full commission, we will have an executive session to discuss environmental attorney talk, likely, but I'm open for a calendar date to have another meeting during the day or evening, whatever you'd like to do. June 13th? Planning meets at 6.
Okay, we can't, because planning meets.
Planning's at 6.
Either, unless you bring up.
Are you all opposed to meeting earlier in the afternoon before some of these committees? Meetings are typically 5:30, right? Like 3, can you do a 3:30? Want to do a meeting before some of your regular meetings? Okay.
Budget's at 5:30 on the 22nd.
What about the 22nd, which is a Wednesday?
Or the 13th.
I won't.
As long as we get out by 6, because planning meets on the
Doesn't
13th.
mean that we can't carry on. The 13th's open. I won't be here on the 13th, but
Well,
the
then we-
13th's open.
We'll go to the 22nd then.
22nd's open. Okay. 22nd, okay with everybody? Of June? 3:30? And that would be before what committee? So you can go from here to budget. 3:30, all right? So it is written. All right. Yeah, so we'll start at 3:30 and then we'll go to 5 or whatever and until we're done, and then you can go right to budget.
Is this to get numbers for Mr. P, or is this the meeting
No,
with
no, we're
Mr.
going to have
Harris?
we're going to have numbers, Mr. P, by this Thursday.
Thursday night, and this meeting is for Mr. Harris, for us all to come together and discuss, right?
Have another powwow.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that we have these numbers, what are we going to do now? And what, yeah, yeah. See what happens between now and then. We good? Any other business? Mayor? Yes.
Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to Commissioner Cush for, listening and saying that, we need to get these numbers and we do need to have these meetings. Not trying to cram any solution down anybody's throat. I've heard that comment and that's not true. We've been looking and working on this for 5 years, but, we've got a crunch time, especially the financial end of it by the end of this month. But I want to say thank you for working with us to work on this problem.
You're quite welcome. It's team effort. It's team sport. Oh, Mayor, or Phil.
Thanks, Mayor and Chairman. Do we have direction on Becky and the RFP? Are we going to hear back?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I thought I had issued a check for an invoice. Ms. Caldwell sent us an invoice. I had asked Steve to go over to finance a few moments ago, and he just brought me a copy of this. This goes back to Caldwell Environmental Solutions, landfill reclamation RFP, January through February of '22. She went out and did a landfill tour at 4 hours, $150 per hour. That was on 1/19 of '22 for $600. She did research on the RFP outline at 250 2.5 hours at $150 an hour, $375 charge. And then on 2/21 of '22, meeting with solid waste director for 2 hours at $150 an hour, $300. And I authorized payment on this invoice for $1,275, and that goes back to 3/29. So she's been paid some of the $25,000, but I don't know why it stopped. She hasn't engaged my office and asked any further questions.
Okay, I will. Sent me a text and said she's on it. On the RFP. Okay. All right.
Well, could we perhaps at this special call meeting get an update on the RFP? Because we're under the impression that it's something we could put out and have actual contractors give us actual numbers for an actual task at the landfill. Do you agree?
Yes, sir, and if you recall back to the other RFP process, some of the vendors or contractors, if you will, said they were not interested in our solid waste, but they would possibly be interested in reclaiming the old landfill. Am I not correct, Mayor, or was that not said? And that's been my whole premise, just for us to know what the option with that particular piece of property, what those options are.
Yeah.
And I don't think we know that right now. We know one, but I don't think we have any others.
Right. Right. We will get that cleared up. And if we want to go back and chat with any of those who said they would harvest, of course, some of them had contingencies that we'll only do it if you do this, this, and this with it. If we want to go back and seek some of those out and talk again, we certainly can do that. All right. We'll have more data on the 22nd. More clarity. All right. Anything else?
One other thing, Bishop had in his report about the groundwater deal. I'd like for him to bring that back to his next meeting he can attend and explain it to us about the leachate and where the water they think now is coming from causing the leachate problem and
Right.
and what he's found out on that.
Yeah.
He may have
We may have good news there.
good news, yes.
Yeah, we may have really good news there. So we'll get that update as well. Anything else? Any other business? We will see you, Robert, you will hear from a small group of us, and we will see you all on the 22nd. Meeting adjourned.